I'm delighted this morning to be joined by Zain Richardson. Zain, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Susie. It's really nice to connect and chat a little bit this morning.
Pleasure. So, a brief intro. There are many things I could say to do the intro, so I'm going to keep it brief and then we'll go into our questions and we can talk about your background in more detail. So, you're founding partner of Crecito, so a boutique advisory firm. And prior to that, you've been CMO of Aero, which is the private aviation service, and then really, I guess, started your career in management. If you kind of look at it from the other way, you started in management consulting, and you've worked with some of the leading luxury and hotel groups, including Marriott, Ritz-Carlton, St. Regis, and Aman. So a very, very impressive pedigree in terms of that luxury and travel sector. And management consultancy. And I'm really pleased that you've joined to answer some questions this morning.
Brilliant.
Happy to get stuck in?
Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect. So as we just said, your exceptional career, particularly with kind of luxury travel brands, they're the ones that really stand out for me. And I'm kind of curious, what led you to go into that sector when you did the management consultancy? What was the attraction for you to go into that sector?
I think really sort of pragmatically, in my kind of consulting days, I did a lot of work acquiring and growing consumer businesses for a lot of investor clients. And so that meant I was actually on the road, I was traveling a lot. So I was a consumer of travel and luxury travel. So I was, from a consumer standpoint, I was engaged with the industry. And then it always interested me to see how different companies sort of approach building a brand in this space and make sure that it stands for something beyond just the physical product and beyond that kind of simple transaction as such. And then obviously consumer businesses have a lot of challenges with them, particularly those which serve premium and luxury consumers, where this idea of community is so critical. And that complexity of engaging those consumers that complexity sort of really interested me, and how you take somebody from a transaction to then obviously a repeat guest or repeat customer, and then ultimately a loyalist and an evangelist for your brand.
Yeah, it's a really interesting customer journey and just a very, frankly, nice space to work in. You've done a lot with driving growth and innovation, looking at the roles that you've done, and you've got some phenomenal skills, and which is why you're obviously doing the advisory firm at the moment. So what excites you about driving growth and innovation?
I think kind of growth and innovation, or commercial success really in any business, comes down to really knowing and understanding your customer. And I think I've learned that in all parts of my career. When you really want to grow or you want to innovate in some way, you've got to take that insight and act on it, and understand a consumer need to then build and deliver what they want, when they want it, make them love it, and then ultimately make them want to come back and buy it again. It's not rocket science as they say, but it's really understanding that consumer need. And it's this kind of left brain analytical and data-led work, connected to the sort of right brain and creative and intuitive side, which is about kind of finding the right solution. And I think for me, just in terms of my personality style, that intersection of those two areas, the left brain, the right brain, when they come together in this sort of consumer focused work, is both what I love and it excites me, but also I think where I add probably most value.
And you're very good at it as well. So I think that's a really good explanation. There's a lot of change within marketing, customer journeys, consumer mindsets, etc. And when we speak to our CMOs, I'm always curious as to what they think the priorities are. What's the top of their to-do list? Would you share with us what you think might be the priorities for chief marketing officers for 2024? Be interested to hear your thoughts.
I think there's a kind of a couple of things which I'm seeing in increasing importance. So building on that idea of sort of knowing the customer, there's obviously incredible advances being made in terms of connecting disparate data sources from obviously interactions, behaviors, transactions, etc. And I think this provides the marketing function and the commercial function, which has always been the voice of the customer, a real opportunity to sort of shine in this respect. So teams can then evolve and own this idea of personalization, which I think we probably can all agree has become really just a buzzword. You see it in earnings calls. Everyone talks about personalization as a thing without really having, or often, that much substance behind it. But this opportunity to take disparate data sources and again think about taking consumer insights from those data sources, from the analysis of those data sources, and going beyond transactions and interactions and really talk and engage with consumers in terms of a relationship. And when I say relationship and words like engagement, I think we've forgotten along the way that these are not just corporate words. These come from the idea of relationships in your personal life. So in your personal relationships, you build trust over time, you offer more value, more of yourself, more vulnerability. And that's how a relationship for a business and a brand should be, that you trust each other more over time and you deliver more value to one another over time, whether that's obviously revenue from the consumer, more services, more value from a business. And so I think that connection point of really understanding the customer and pulling together different data sources to have a viewpoint on what drives them, motivates them to drive more value, and then obviously from a revenue standpoint convert that, I think is critical. And then secondly, I'm biased, right? But I think service matters everywhere and more than ever. And I think particularly, well, actually, even for product companies, where there's a huge amount of commoditization, competition, and often price sensitivity. Just look at the European sort of electric vehicle market, which is really under threat right now from competitors from overseas. So service is important, and I'll give you an example. I'll give you a personal example. We bought a vacuum cleaner, a premium brand, let's say, but not the iconic brand that everyone thinks of when you think of vacuum cleaners. I bought it because product features looked great, but also it had a warranty, 5-year warranty, which I didn't at that moment know would be delivered upon or whether it would actually sort of come through. 3 years later, I called them, we had an issue with it. Next thing I know, we're doing a video troubleshooting call where we're going through different parts of the vacuum cleaner.
What with your vacuum?
Yeah, I'm incredibly so where this person is talking me through different elements. And then very smoothly and quickly, she organized a replacement and then the automatic continuation of the warranty. And this is a very obviously a specific example, but what I would say is this product company, and it's got many different verticals, has invested in extremely knowledgeable teams who are very engaged, very helpful. They've invested in the tech to be able to do this virtual troubleshooting. And then most importantly, at the end of this, the money I've paid for this vacuum cleaner, I think is money well spent. I'm an absolute convert, and I've advocated, and at least 3 people I know have then since bought this brand of vacuum cleaner. So that I'm really pleased to see businesses which have historically been focused on the product features and quality recognize that this other part of the aftercare and the service side is critical to their ultimate profitability long term.
It's really interesting, and when we stop recording, I should be asking you which vacuum brands I might buy one. But yeah, you give some really good examples there. And I'm thinking sort of within the role, there's the leadership element is so important. And I wonder if there's any sort of particular leadership, either experiences or guidance that really stand out for you that would be interesting to share with the audience.
Yeah, so I would say I've got probably a couple of pieces of advice that I often share with folks that work for me or I interact with. The first one actually comes from a former manager and mentor to me. It's actually a female leader, so a great sort of connection point today for International Women's Day. So to take a moment to recognize and celebrate today. She always said to me that you should focus on the meaning and the message somebody is trying to communicate beyond the specific words that they're using. So obviously this is particularly relevant in businesses where you've got global operations and you've got different native languages, so use of language will be different. But actually I found this helped me many times over the years, also with different functional teams where for example, operations teams and then design and innovation teams that may have completely different vernaculars and different ways of thinking about the business. And so are getting into sort of bumping heads, let's say, because the way that they're talking about the business is just very different to one another in the language they're using. But actually, once they get beyond the specific words and understand what they're trying to achieve in their respective functions, I was able to help sort of guide them through to find solutions. So that's something that's always stuck with me, not to get hung up on the specific words, but just look behind for the meaning. And then one other thing, which is a bit more, I guess, personally relevant. So I've been involved with the Movember Foundation for the last, I guess, more than a decade, since my father passed away. And one thing that sort of one of their key messages, which I think is really important, both personally and professionally, is everybody is always fighting a battle that you know nothing about. So be kind always. And that's lovely from an empathy standpoint, but I think it really helps also in the workplace, where somebody may be having an off day for something that's going on in their personal life. The person receiving that may interpret that it's something personally related. So it sort of takes that out and say, actually, maybe they're just having something that I don't know about. So it diffuses that, as well as allowing them to be more empathetic. So that's something that I've seen that also has value and resonates with me a lot.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. Yes, I think that's really, really good advice to give. And from a career point of view, is there any advice that you would share with, senior marketing managers, heads of marketing, people who are kind of working their way through in their career? Is there any career advice you could share?
Yeah, I think so. One of the most sort of memorable experiences I've had was leading a business through the pandemic, for good and for bad. And so trust is a critical factor in resilience, and part of that trust is being willing to be vulnerable and also communicating where things are working and where things are not. So I would, with my teams, I guess if I think about my development, I've always been in roles where I've had the opportunity to have stretch opportunities, which I've always loved. And similarly, I embrace that with the teams that I work with. But what that means is it also requires a level of trust and openness in terms of communication, of when things are going well and when you need support. So from a team member standpoint, I think it's speak up when you need more support, because that vulnerability is actually will help with your long-term resilience. And then from obviously a manager standpoint, line manager standpoint, being attuned, if you've got performers who are taking on stretch opportunities, just recognize that you can't just sort of set and forget, that you've got to be attuned to when they might not be putting their hand up to say they need help, but they may do. So I think it works sort of both sides.
And on a personal level, what a phenomenal career to date. What are your plans for the next few years?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm advising private equity funds again and some consumer businesses with a particular focus on sort of growth strategies, which I find very exciting. I've joined a few boards actually, and I'm going to plan to continue that work because I'm finding it very rewarding, both kind of personally and professionally. I've chosen organizations which align with my passions, and from sort of services businesses, consumer brands, but also organizations focused on things like more inclusive societies, but also organizations where either there's a need or, more importantly, I can have an impact from a skill set and an experience standpoint, particularly from a commercial standpoint. So I work with Cats Protection, which is an organization that some people have heard of if you're a cat lover, but it's actually one of the largest animal welfare charities in the UK, and about 1,000 employees, 10,000 volunteers.
Oh, wow.
And they've got a retail footprint of about 100 shops on the high street. So one of the pieces of work that I'm kind of guiding the team on is retail strategy. Where do we need to consolidate? Where do we need to expand, change the format? And obviously things like e-commerce, etc. And then I sit on the finance and investment committee of another business. And so there's a lot of sort of work around commercial due diligence, which really sort of engages that left brain that we talked about, which I also love.
Oh, you're a very busy person by the sounds of things. That's a lot. Well, I genuinely, Zain, wish you the very, very best of luck with everything that you're working on. It's it's exciting, and I'm sure we'll be hugely successful. And thank you very much for your time and joining me this morning.
Thanks very much, Susie. Really appreciate
Pleasure.
the time as well.
Pleasure.